Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum-Milner.
And this is a podcast, A la Latina.
The playbook to succeed, being your authentic self.
Today, Marta Newhart Ronquillo, former Chief Communication and Brand Officer for Westinghouse. Stay tuned, because there are 3 key takeaways.
The first one is the importance of having your own board of advisors, people that will help you navigate the trickiest moments in your career.
Number 2, how can we Latinas leverage the playbook and resources of other diverse communities who have broken the glass ceiling, like the African American community?
And number 3, teach yourself the basics of how to become a great communicator, because great communication opens the door to better opportunities and even better relationships.
All of that and more here, A la Latina. Today, an incredible guest, Marta Newhart Ronquillo.
Marta was the most senior Latina in 3 NASDAQ companies. Most recently, she was the Chief Communications and Brand Officer for Westinghouse. She has served in several boards, including some government ones and the Special Olympics. And today, she serves on the board of the Page Society, which is a network of CMOs and Chief Communications Officers. Welcome, Marta.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
We're so excited to
Thank
have you
you.
here. Amazing. Okay, let's get going.
All right.
Let's start with our favorite subject, you and your past. How did you come to be who you are and what you do?
So the family I grew up in was run by these really strong women. And I thought all families were that way, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly the Mexican-American families that really have a matriarch that runs them.
Mm-hmm.
That everything my grandmother said, we did. We didn't question it. We just did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it made us better. It made us better at whatever we did, and it made us stronger. And so she would get us to think about things that we wouldn't have thought about otherwise. She got us to think about things that we should be doing not only better, but differently.
Mm-hmm.
And she got us to embrace our Latinidad. She was a very important thing. Now, like I said, when I was growing up, I thought everybody's household was run by really strong women. It wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up thinking women could do anything. Women were important. Women were central to everything. That helped me in the corporate world. It also kind of hurt me too. And the reason I say it hurt me was because the corporate world wasn't designed for that. The corporate world had another way of thinking. But the family I grew up in was all about the women and the strength of the women. So when I came into corporate America, I thought, wow, you know, this is great. I can do anything. Well, in an all-male dominated aerospace company that I first worked in.
It was Boeing, right?
It was, yes. That wasn't the way they thought about things back then. Now it's different.
Yeah.
But back then, they didn't think about things that way. So I would say to you, it really helped me get to where I am. And then once I thought I got there, it kind of hurt me a little bit. So I had to navigate through that.
It totally reminds me of Barbie, the movie. You know, like, for those that haven't seen it, I know you saw it. Did you see
Yeah,
Barbie?
it was great.
Where like they grew up, you grew up in Barbie world where women were strong and independent, and then
Yes,
it's like
yeah.
you grow up and you realize that not everybody.
It wasn't like that.
So how
Yeah.
did you deal with that when you arrived to Boeing?
I learned how to really think about when it was appropriate to show my Latinidad and when it was appropriate to think about things and have a perspective. I learned the hard way. I really learned the hard way because I worked with all men, and most in the early part of my career was with Asian men. So that was a whole nother level of having to navigate. So thinking through that, I had to think about, okay, I've got to have a perspective to maintain that seat at the table. But to do that, what really fits there? What really works there? So I had to think about that. You know, now is a different story.
Yeah.
But back then, I had to really temper that. And that meant tempering my Latinidad.
Did you have somebody to ask advice from? Like, how did you know what to do?
I mostly sought out mentors who were African American people because they were successful people in the organization that I worked in. And they could cut a clear path through anything. You know, I would look around. I did not see Latinos, Latinas. I did not see people like us. even a few layers down, I didn't see people like us. But I did see an underserved minority group in the African American people who could work through this. And they were so loyal to each other. I really admired that because that was the community I came from, where women were so loyal to each other. They would do anything for each other. You know this phrase, my sister's keeper? They lived that.
Yeah.
You've heard this one, my sister's keeper, where you will do anything for another Latina. A Latina calls you up and you say, yes, Martha, I'll help you with that. Or you call me and say, yes, Claudia, I will do that. And that's what I grew up in. And so I noticed with African American people, they were doing something similar, but in the corporate world, they were trying so hard to get ahead. They were helping each other with a playbook that was much stronger than any other ones I saw. So I sought them out as mentors and asked them for help and advice.
Let's go into that African American community, sense of community. How do you feel it is different to Latinos? Is that changing? What was the playbook?
I think any underserved community understands another underserved community. Maybe not the culture, but you understand the challenges. You understand the barriers. You understand the things
You share a
that
fight.
have. That's right. You share that. And so that's what you have in common. And because of that, they were so strong at putting together this playbook about how they could help each other succeed. Not talk about discrimination, not talk about things that held them back, not talk about things that they couldn't do, but focus on what they could do, where they added value, and all of those things that would get them ahead in corporate America.
So wait, pause. Not talk about discrimination, meaning do not waste your time complaining about how discriminated we are. Let's focus on how do we take over that job.
That's right. That's right. Because
All right.
if you focus on something negative, it becomes a part of you. You don't want that as a part of you because you want to get ahead. You want to push forward. They were so strong, they could overlook that and turn it into a positive. You've only got so much mind share.
Yeah.
Think about it. How much do you want floating around up there? Do you want these issues about negativity and challenges and all that floating around up there? Or, to use your words, do you want to flip the switch and think about what you can do, how you can overcome, how you can get through? Because you know what's out there now. You're aware of it. It's not surprising. And so I think that playbook for them was not only about helping each other, they took that notion of mentors and sponsors on steroids, and they really helped push each other forward. So you know what a mentor is, right? Someone who can advise you. The sponsor is the person that's not in the room that advocates for you when you're not there. That's what they would do. And I saw that, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Just compare that to me with being a Latina and seeing how we as a community interact. How do we do it? Have we done a little bit more of that community and that sister
I am my sister's keeper.
keeper?
Yes, yes. No one does this better than Latinas. No one. Make no mistake about it. I really believe that. Latinas are so good at doing this that it feels like home. It feels so comfortable. And you can meet a Latina for the first time. She's instantly your friend because you feel that connection to home. You feel that connection to something deeper inside of yourself that's loyal, that's an advocate, that really pushes hard for someone else because you know they deserve it. And you know that they've probably been in an environment where it hasn't really represented all of their best skills and values and everything they can bring out. And so you want to help them do that. I think Latinas, our day is about to come, if it hasn't already, because we do that so well.
So if you're listening to this podcast, you're obliged to be a sister keeper and support Latinas only
Yes.
because they are Latinas and
Yes.
only because we need to share the access code. When you get it, share it so that we can take someone with us.
If you open the door, leave it open.
Leave it open. Exactly.
I think at the table of success, there are many chairs. There's room for everyone. There is room.
So, Martha, you've worked in several companies from early stages, startups to public traded ones. So, tell us about the journey in your perspective of how you have made the decision and the transition from one role to another, given the very different nature of every company.
You know, it's funny because when I started my career, I would love to sit here and tell you, Claudia, that I'm very strategic. Some things just sort of happen, right? Life just sort of happens. So when I graduated from the University of Washington with my undergrad degree, I interviewed or had 3 interviews set up. I had one set up at Boeing, I had one set up at Bank of America, and one set up at Microsoft. So 3 big names, right? And so I was ready to go. I had a degree. I was ready to go and launch my career. So I went to the Boeing interview, and I realized there was something that I could do well. I noticed it in interviews that people would really respond to me, and I would get the job. And I got the job. My first interview out of college, I got the job. Here's the downside. The next year, Microsoft went public. So if I had gone on that interview, but you can't look back because of the experiences I had at Boeing. And so I started out in Asia Pacific sales, where you actually sell airplanes to Asian carriers. And so here I am, a Latina in Asia Pacific selling airplanes and working with a very small group of men to make that happen. And I learned through that process very early, you have to know what you're saying, you have to hold your own, and you have to be confident. Does this sound familiar? Things that Latinas can do well? Yeah, see? And so through that, I realized there's something universal here. There's something that, whether you're underserved or female or whatever you are, there is a great equalizer. And that equalizer is communication. If you can communicate well, it will change your socioeconomic status. It will change where you are in the corporate ladder. It may even change who you partner with. I think it did.
Yeah.
So these things they just started coming to me. Oh, that's going to change. That's going to get better. That's going to get better. So how can I communicate even better and keep climbing the corporate ladder? So that's where I found myself. Now, in Asia at the time, I would say particularly China, they weren't really big on Mexican people. Let's just say it that way. They didn't really know too many, so they called me Cibana, which means Spanish. Because when I would say to them, I'm Latino, they would say, no, you're Spanish, right? Right? Okay, I guess I am Spanish, you know? And so when you talk about, is there a time where you should kind of pull back on your Latinidad or you should push it out? That was one of those times that didn't feel comfortable to me, but I did it anyway. I did it anyway because I was thinking more about what we needed to do to be successful in Asia. And I didn't want to be the one person on the team who was not only female, but was going to pull the team back.
You spoke about being high potential at Boeing, but you left Boeing. You've worked in small companies, big companies in 4 industries. When you look back, can you tell us why did you make the decisions that you made? And also, what do you think were maybe key moments, key decisions, key people that help you like navigate the journey?
I realized after so many years at Boeing that I needed to take other risks. I had taken risks within Boeing to be an expat twice and to actually go from the sales organization into communications. And that was a big risk. Actually, I just mentioned 4 really big risks that I took. And then I realized when I started to hear people talking about if you really want to grow at a faster or different level, sometimes you got to work at a different company in a different industry. It's really hard because the stereotype is if you don't know our industry, how can you do well in our industry? So I left the Boeing company and I was recruited to a company called Covidien, which became Medtronic. Medtronic actually purchased Covidien surgical devices. We were into all kinds of things, but surgical devices was our main product. So
You were doing communications.
yes, and I went from being an E-Series director, which meant executive director, to actually vice president on a global scale. So it was a big step up for me, and it was a really good step up for me. What they wanted to do was change the brand. They realized that there's equity in a brand that you can hold on the balance sheets. And so when companies go through M&A, that's something they look at. What is the value of your brand? A good example is Apple. So Apple, year over year, increases by several $1 billion the value of their brand. In my case, I worked with them to actually change the brand of Covidien, to think about it more as surgical devices and less of some of these other surgical products and things like that that weren't really having an impact on the value of the stock. And so from there, I actually went to a startup company. There were some former Boeing executives, including the CFO, that started a solar photovoltaic company. And this company took non-rare earth elements and turned them into a semiconductor. The vision was not only solar panels made out of these non-rare earth elements, but also a semiconductor that you could paint on a car. So now your car is actually a solar powered. All of these things,
wow.
yeah. So the technology was really strong. It was really interesting. And it came about the time of Solandra. Do you remember Solandra, where the Obama administration invested in the solar companies? And so a lot of investors got really resistant to solar companies because of this. Well, we had a printer. We had in the Kodak factory, we were using their printers to actually print the semiconductor. So it was a brilliant idea, right? We were ready to commercialize. And then the solar market was seen as not really a good thing at the time. And we had brought in a lot of money. So we ended up actually selling the technology, selling the patents, and going through that whole process of closing it up. Small companies like that, especially when you have an idea that is going to disrupt an entire industry, are where you can learn so much. I learned more through that experience, I think, than any other corporate experience I've had. And here's the learnings. Everything you bring to the table, you're going to work hard anyway. Everything you bring to that table, it's up to you. So you're going to work 18 hours a day anyway. Why not do it for something that you really feel that you believe in? The other thing is you don't wear a lot of hats. You wear every hat. You are everything. You're investor relations. You're the CEO. You are the person who fixes the printer. And sometimes you're even the person who takes out the trash. You're all of these things. And you've got to be prepared whenever a new investor comes in to actually present to them. Get them to invest in what you're doing. Show them the market. Show them the potential, all these things. Because that is in the sustainability world, the energy world, Johnson Controls called me and said, you know, we really like this whole energy piece of it. Johnson Controls is actually a very high-tech company that works on everything in your building. They have controls for everything, heat, solar, HVAC, all these different things, cleaning the air in your building. And they wanted that experience and they wanted that brand work so that they could change their brand from being an automotive and a buildings brand to more of a true multi-industrial. Why? Because multi-industrial multipliers on the market are 25% higher. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I went to a company called Carpenter Technologies that does specialty metals, and then back into energy again with Westinghouse. And each one of these experiences built on the last, and each one I was able to take something from what I learned from the last one and bring to the table to the next one. The one skill I would say every company needs, every company values, and every company should have at the table are people who know their business, know how to make money for their company, and can articulate it in a way that anyone can understand.
I want to follow up on something you said. You said that if you can communicate well, basically the world of opportunities open up. But
They
you
do.
didn't say how you became a good communicator.
Ah, yes, that's really important because there wasn't really a playbook on how to do that. And for me, I really listened to people who I thought communicated well. In the corporate world, we value people who can give a really good presentation and convince you that their idea, their business model, their business, whatever they're trying to accomplish, is the right one. Now, there's ways to do that. You have to show the business case, you have to show the EBITDA, you have to show the margin expansion, you have to show all these things and the market and the headroom in the market. So I learned very early on that the way to really learn good communication is to listen to those that were perceived as good communicators. So how did they do that? There were several people that I saw, a lot of CEOs. A lot of CEOs are really good communicators. You listen to them talk and you think, oh, that guy, that lady, she's so smart. They're really good communicators. They can take their thoughts and communicate them to you, and you know exactly what they're doing. So one of the things I learned was from my family, storytelling. Storytelling. We didn't know this was a thing in business. And here I am sitting in Asia, working with everyone, not using this tool that I was given that is very effective. The best storytellers are the ones that bring you into the story. Story living. We call it story living. Story living is where you see yourself inside the story and where you can really identify that in a way. If you're a consumer and I'm a brand and I pull you into the story, I hope corporate America's listening right now because this will make you money. When you see yourself in that story, you're not only loyal to that brand, but you're going to buy from that brand and it's going to create an emotion in you. Oh, they get me. They get me. There's ways of going about that. But I learned that storytelling was one of the most impactful tools in business. It's one of the most impactful tools for getting your customer to not only interact with you and buy from you, but to be loyal to you and to keep that relationship going.
And I think that naturally we Latinos are great communicators. We love talking. The question is whether we know how to do storytelling and how to craft the art of communication. You're a great storyteller. Can you teach our audiences the basics of great storytelling? How can Latinas particularly become great storytelling and craft the art?
Yes, of course. And I think there's this whole body of science out there. There's data and science that shows that this is the way it works. There's data and science that shows when you see yourself in the story, that you're going to feel differently and you're going to act differently. And the person who's telling you the story is going to have a greater impact on you. The number one thing is to really understand, what are you trying to communicate? What is the core of what you're trying to get across? Okay, that sounds really simple, doesn't it? I want to get this across. But it's really hard for people to do, to focus on what is it you're really trying to get across. The other thing is, when you're building the narrative, what is the narrative that actually supports that point? So let's say the point is Claudia wants to get rid of the injustice in our community. So what is that point? You want to make things more opportunistic. So you have to think about, how are you showcasing that in a way that your audience is going to resonate with? So those are three very simple steps. The other thing is you can't forget human emotion and psychology. We talked a little bit earlier about the reaction to a story. We talked about how you can see yourself in the story. But what is next? What comes next? And if you think about what you're trying to get people to do and you think about that psychology, you will make it even simpler. Simple is hard. It's very hard. So you have to think about the core of what you're trying to communicate. What is it you're trying to impact? What are you trying to make different? And then what is that platform and your audience will resonate with?
Yeah. I want to tell a story that I use when I want to illustrate a point.
Okay.
So one day, my son, I have a 4-year-old son, and he was like 2, and he woke up in the middle of the night and screamed. So I go in and he says, "There's a gorilla in my closet." And I'm like, "There's no gorilla in your closet. Of course there's no gorilla in your closet. Look." I opened the closet, show him there's no gorilla. No way he would go to sleep, right? So we took the crib, the travel crib, to our room. Second night, he didn't want to go to sleep in his bedroom because there was a gorilla in the closet. After a week of not sleeping in his room, we were pretty desperate. And I come home, and his nanny had put him to sleep in his crib. So I asked the nanny, "How did you convince him there's no gorilla in the closet?" And he said, "Oh, he told me there's a gorilla in the closet. I opened the closet, I grabbed the gorilla, I left the room with the gorilla, and I threw the gorilla out of the apartment." And I just
See,
thought,
no more gorilla.
no more. And I thought, there's another way. Like, sometimes your way is not the way
That's
that's going to
right.
work, and you have to be
That's
open
right.
to asking others for their perspective. And even if sometimes their ideas are insane, sometimes they work.
That's
So
right.
this is a story
That's
I
very
tell
good.
when I want to illustrate, like, being open to somebody else's crazy ideas.
Yeah.
So I want to give you mine. So I am a data-driven person, probably because I've been a marketer always in organizations that don't have budgets, and I always have to know as opposed to try. I have to know where things are. So every story that I give is data-driven, evidence-based, sticky, memorable, and personal, but never intimate. That's where I think we cross a boundary when you think that you're telling something that you have to be personal. You have to create empathy in everything
That's
you're
right,
saying and
yeah.
doing, but never cross a line in which you're like, "Oh, that's too much information." Like that, I never want to know more that I
'Cause you
want
can't
to
go
know.
back.
Can never
Yeah.
go back. And I think that we do that mistake so much, confusing what's personal, what's intimate, and being personal is being able to share something of your person, but being intimate is something that you wouldn't share
Yeah, that's
with
right.
anyone
Yeah.
that is not your closest friend. But again, yeah. Great. So, okay, let's
Yeah.
continue doing this communication, storytelling a little bit more. So many Latinas might want to be like you and get into brand communication and get into storytelling. What advice would you give them? What tools, resources, podcasts, books, courses, where to start?
There's a lot of things you can do. There's amazing books out there. The Storyteller's Secret, that's a really good book on how to think about the construction of a story. Another really good book is Smart Brevity. So Smart Brevity is really about saying less. Just think of it this way: less is more. So when you say less, you have a bigger impact. You know, these stories that we're telling, they were very short. And they had 3 thoughts, and they had a superhero, your nanny.
Was it my nanny or the gorilla or my son?
The gorilla.
The nanny, my love.
The gorilla was the villain. And so see how there's formulas to these stories.
Yeah, I hired the nanny, so I'm the superhero.
There you are. You're the superhero.
I love that.
Let me give you one more point, because Claudia was asking, watching people. Somebody I've watched who has been dead for 150 years, you think, okay, now where is this going, is Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in the United States. Frederick Douglass had some things going for him. Frederick Douglass was very handsome. He's African-American male, and he figured out that great communication is just not the vocal word, it's the visual. So in the 1800s, photography was just coming into its realm. And he wanted to be photographed the same way white men were, sitting up straight, looking dignified, you know, wearing nice clothes, having their hair coiffed, all of these things. He became one of the most photographed people of the 1800s, because not only did he give great speeches, but he made sure, because he knew this is going to change the way the African-American people are viewed. Because if they see me sitting this way, being photographed this way, think about that kind of communication. No cell phones, no microphones, no TV, nothing that you could communicate better than the visual. And he used that.
Love that. I do that. I have to say, I absolutely overdo that because I know that images travel faster than words.
They do.
And every time that I'm invited to a Hispanic event or an award or whatever it is, I try to overdo the royalty. So looking like a princess, like a queen, like dresses, not quinceañera, but I like, like going
Yes.
royal. So I think that we need role models where you can just like start imagining yourself the way that I would have liked imagining myself. But also when I don't go to Latino events or like more non-Latino events, I try to overdo the elegance so
Yeah.
that, like it's a flipping image altogether. Everything communicates,
that's
isn't
right.
it?
Exactly. That's why now I'm wearing earrings, because Claudia has told me that I need to wear earrings.
Oh, they look really nice.
So one thing that I would love for you to give me as advice on how to do it.
She always takes this personal.
Oh,
no,
like, this
okay.
is her.
Okay.
This is like
in
this
case,
memo.
in
Yeah,
case you guys
exact. She
haven't
goes
noticed,
like,
this is my mentorship session on camera with all of you.
That's why we're here. I
That's why
wondered.
you're all here.
Oh.
it's her personal casting.
This is for me. But I hear you speaking, and the pace with which you speak, it's like so perfect. You don't speak too fast that it's hard to follow, or that I think sometimes people think that people that speak very fast are not as smart.
Or nervous.
Or they're
they
nervous.
think they're nervous,
but you
right?
don't speak so slow
Yeah.
that you're like, is she acting? Like she wants to speak.
Is
What's
she-
going on?
Say,
Like,
come
how
on,
did you
speak
get?
faster.
How did you get to the speed at which you speak? Because that's trained.
You guys know, for Latinos, everything started at the kitchen table. So everything started there. It was all
Okay.
about food. It was all about participating at the kitchen table. And my kitchen table, there's all these kids. There's my parents, my grandparents, and maybe some stragglers that came along, We're all sitting there. And everyone called me Martita. And when my mother or my father would ask me something, they expected a really good answer. They expected it. And so I would answer, Martita, what did you do today? Oh, well, I caught the bus. I went to school. I did this. I did. No. Perfect English. Martita, perfect English. And then you get the look. You get the look. So there was pressure to speak in perfect English. They didn't talk about pace. They didn't talk about any of that other stuff. They just said perfect English because they wanted us to have communication skills, because they knew that would help us get ahead in life. They knew that would be important in the lives that we were about to lead. And so that's what really pushed me to speak that way. I've also studied a lot of speeches from people who I think speak very well.
Like who?
John F. Kennedy is a really good example. I think Obama is exceptional. And some people would say, well, he's just a good orator. No, he's a really good storyteller too. And he was able to impact people. So following them and seeing how they did it. And there's also, I was just watching a documentary on Frida Kahlo. And they
Is
had...
she a good speaker? for you?
Yes, yes. Now, there's very little audio of her because of the time, right? Because she was born in the 1900. So there's very little audio. So they brought in someone else that they said spoke the way she did. She was as clear in her speaking as she was in her art. Everything was very clear. The pain, the joy, the agony, everything was crystal clear. And you couldn't help but love her. You couldn't help but like it.
And so I think it's important that we learn the art and craft of communication, storytelling, but also be able to be yourself, being authentic. And I think that one of the most important pieces of feedback I get is that people trust me because they can see through me. I'm authentic, I'm genuine. The way that I speak, the way I present, the way I speak really comes as a genuine. And I do think that we have heard from all of our guests that pretending to be someone you're not is not going to get you to
No,
success.
yeah.
So I would like to know a little bit more in the context of communicating and public speaking and storytelling. I think that there's very few Latinas and Hispanics that are, like really great public speakers, that are really great at that craft, even if we're so naturally prone and good to that. And I think it is related to self-confidence. Can we talk about that piece of communication, public speaking, storytelling, with respect to the being comfortable being yourself?
Well, what do they say? Be yourself because everyone else is taken. It's the easiest way to get across an idea, a thought, a business notion, something like that. If you embrace who you are, and this is why I think it's so important that Latinas embrace who they are. You know, we were talking earlier that 70% of Latinas don't really express that in their current work environments because they're not comfortable with that. Here's why it's not a good thing. Because if you embrace who you are and you appreciate the roots and the place that you came from, and you think about all the people that were part of how you got here, all the Latinas that were part of how you got here, that gives you that inner strength. It gives you that notion of, I can hold my own because they did before me. We call them trailblazers, right? I call them chingonas. It's the same thing. They had to do it in a stronger way than we did. It's a little bit easier for us. Our stage is bigger, though. Your stage is much bigger. And you have to think about that. So Latinas, if you embrace who you are, you embrace your Latina dad, and you think about how that brings value. That's what every corporation wants. That's what every board wants. They want value. The minute you see that, you are going to appreciate and have confidence in everything you bring to the table. And you're going to look at people from other ethnic backgrounds and think, I'm here because I need to be here. I have the strength to be here. There is no reason why I shouldn't be here. And that confidence is going to come through, and it's real. It's real. They just aren't opening the door to let it out yet.
But how can we get Latinas to believe what you're saying when, just like it happened to you, sometimes people say to us things that totally crush us. Like you were told when you were younger, thank God you don't look Latina, right? Like what did you do when you heard that? What impact did it have? And for anyone in our audience that has ever been told that, what would you say they should do with that message?
You feel erased. You feel as though somebody has erased who you are. But think about the other side of that. And the other side of that is bringing that out. The story that you're talking about was when I was early in my career at Boeing. I was considered a high potential, and there was about 15 of us that were pulled into this organization. Every corporation has them. They call them hypos.
Yeah.
That we were pulled in, and we got to meet with all the senior leaders of the company. And so this one meeting that we were having was with the CHRO, the highest ranking HR executive in the company. And he came in, and we were all sitting around the table, and he went to different people around the table and were asking them questions about themselves. And when he got to me, he said, Marta, you're somebody, right? And I thought to myself, naively, well, of course I am. I'm a hypo. This is what was going through my head. That's why I'm here. And he said, where are you from? What's your ethnicity? And I said, I'm Mexican-American, just like that. I'm Mexican-American. And he said, thank God you don't look like it. Now, I think this is what you mean when you say, why would you come out as a Latina when something like that can happen? Here's the thing. We are the fastest demographic growing in the United States today. There is a market, there is a value to that market. There is all kinds of things associated with that is not slowing down. That is a freight train that is taking off and gaining steam. And so if you are a Latina and you embrace your Latina dad and you bring that to the table without saying you're sorry and telling who you are in an authentic way, you're going to succeed. You can't help but succeed. Companies need you. Corporations need more and more Latinos to help them get ahead. And this is something that there is a way for Latinas to not only embrace, but to think about how they're going to be part of the future.
Yeah, but why do you think that person told you that? Like, why did an accomplished and professional and successful CHRO thought it's better not to look like Latina?
Now, remember, we're in 2023,
exactly.
and this was many years ago. And so at that time, it wasn't accepted. What I'm saying is today it's accepted. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about who you are and what value you bring to the table, because I think it's more accepted than ever. And I think that's important, especially for younger Latinas to know. Several months ago, I was in Washington, D.C., talking to 5 female senators. And I said to them, you know, we've got an immigration problem in this country, and you need to figure out the policy. I'm just here to tell you that within one generation, this is what you get. And I think for a lot of them, that was an eye-opener. It was like, whoa, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I said, this is what you get after one generation.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, you're going to think differently about the people coming over the border. The reason I bring this up is because if we look at where we are today versus where we were, then we realize what we can do. What got us here won't get us there, but we do realize, Claudia, what we can do to get ahead. And I think for a lot of very young Latinas, if you think about what your mother and grandmother went through to get ahead, and you realize those shoulders you stand on, you know that you can progress.
If someone tells you, thank God you don't look Latina, what's an appropriate response to flip the script in a normal, elegant, and positive, progress-looking way?
That doesn't get you fired.
That
Yes,
doesn't
that
get you
doesn't get you
fired.
fired. Well, what I said was, if you go to Mexico City, you will see a lot of people that look like me.
Yeah.
That's one answer.
Yes, that is one answer.
Yeah, and it's a
That's
good
one
opportunity
answer.
to share the diversity of Latinos, right?
You have to broaden their thinking. So you're not going to solve world peace in one meeting, but you can chip away at it. You can make those baby steps. If you go to a certain area of Mexico, you will see people like us.
So talk to us about the inverse. Where has been your Latinidad a pro for you in your career? How has it helped you take you further and go more?
It's really helped me in negotiations. I watched my mother and my grandmother negotiate anything. And I watched them barter, and I watched them do things and say things that would help them get what they needed. Whether it was groceries or clothes or whatever it was, they negotiated everything. I think that way. So from the very first job I had to even today, I negotiate salary. I negotiate, and I heard you guys talk about having a whole section on negotiations. This is really important because you have to be able to negotiate not only for a better salary, but for what are you being asked to do and what is appropriate for you to be asked to do. And also, you were talking earlier about the naysayers. If you can negotiate with a naysayer and convert them into being a proponent, that's really good negotiation skills. And so you have to sort of pull yourself out of that environment that you're talking about and be able to communicate it very objectively. What am I trying to achieve? I'm trying to achieve a higher salary. How am I going to get that? So for me, the basics of how I got that was, what is it they're asking me to do exactly? And then what is that worth? And then what is my experience worth? And then how do I have something they can't get somewhere else? And so those things contribute to your negotiation. This comes back to that confidence. You've got to know your worth. You've got to know your value. Because if you don't know what those things are, you can't negotiate for yourself. And so I really applaud you if you have another session just on negotiation, because I think that's one of the most important things, one of the gifts that you can give to the Latina community.
We should do some workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that it was later in your career that you embraced your last name.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I got married when I was 18. And I'm still married to the same guy.
Amazing.
He's a great guy.
Great.
He's also very handsome. So that helps, right? And his last name is Newhart. When I was younger, I wanted to be a news broadcaster. I wanted to be that lady you saw on television that was giving you the news every night.
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah,
that.
you can see that. And so his name was perfect.
Yeah.
I didn't choose him for the name. I chose him because
The looks.
I was in love.
Yeah.
The looks.
Because of the look.
And so I took his name. And so for many years, a few decades in my career, I was known as Martha Newhart. And then I have a very famous cousin who is an activist, and she's also considered the best Mexican-American chef in America. Her name is Silvana Salcido Esperanza. So the Salcidos are our cousins. And she is in Phoenix. And if you go in downtown Phoenix, there is a big 3-story bank building, and they have a mural of her. So Silvana said to me many years ago, when you look around corporate America, do you see people like us? No. The next level down, do you see people like us? No. How about the next level below that? No. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And I thought about it, and I was thinking about it. I have this platform. I'm in corporate America. I'm here. I don't care what they think at this point. I'm going to use my family name.
When was this?
This was about 5 years ago.
Oh, very recent.
It's very recent. Yeah. Now, what did that lead to? It led to people saying to me, wait, what is going on here?
Are you getting a divorce?
Yeah,
Or,
what
like,
is happening?
that the
You
lover? Yeah.
know, what happened to that 18-year-old guy you
Not handsome anymore, right?
What's going on
Exacto.
here? So there's something really good that comes with age. Well, there's many things. There's many good things that come with age. And one of them is wisdom, and the wisdom to know what is important and what doesn't matter. And the way other people see you, sometimes it just doesn't matter. So I use my name. It's very important to me. And I get asked to speak out on the Latino community. I get asked to speak about our demographics. I get asked to speak about what do we do? What is the future for us? Why is it important that we look at Latinos as employees, as people in the C-suite, people on boards, all of those things? And I always do. It's really important that we use the platforms that we've ascended to in a very productive way. So Silvana uses food, and I use my voice.
Now, you've been in corporate America long enough to probably understand what are the stereotypes of Latinos that just we need to flip. Can you talk to us about one in particular that you feel like it's misunderstood, like one Latino characteristic that is seen in a negative light that we should say, yes, we are that, but that's a good thing for corporate America, not a bad thing?
I think the one about being loud. I think what's really good about it is we have a perspective and we're confident in what that is, and that's able to move companies forward. If you think about the most competitive companies in the world, they are going after markets that their competitors cannot get them in. They're going after different things that their competitors just can't compete in. So when we talk about being loud, you know, Jennifer Lopez has this song, Let's Get Loud. That's where we are loud in music in a very good way. And we're really conquering the music world. In corporate America, that doesn't really work. We are not loud. We are confident, and we are going to take risks that are good for the company. These are risks that we've thought about. These are risks that are good for our markets, and these are risks that are good for our portfolios. That is one that I would flip the switch on.
Okay.
From loud to
From loud to confident and knowing what you're bringing to the table. It's going to be good for companies.
Yeah.
amazing. And I hope that by flipping the script, we can get Latinas that maybe are choosing to change their names and
Yes.
hide their
Use it.
last names and so on to use it in half the time that we have been coming to this realization.
That's right.
One of the questions that we ask all our guests is to tell us, if you were talking to your 30-year-old self, you had been married for 12 years by then with your
I know,
handsome
isn't that
husband.
amazing? Yeah.
Yes. What advice would you give yourself now that you have the perspective?
I would say your day will come. It will happen. You think that because of who you are or where you came from is a detriment. It's actually an attribute. And that's what I would say to my 30-year-old self.
But why do you think that's something you need to tell your 30-year-old self? Were you insecure?
'Cause I
Did
didn't
you
know.
doubt yourself?
I didn't know. I was in a world that didn't embrace that. They didn't embrace who we are. They didn't embrace Latinidad. They didn't embrace those kinds of things.
And that made you doubt yourself?
It did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad.
So
Power
your
through.
your day will come as in believe.
Belief in yourself and belief in what you can do and belief in what your capability is.
All right.
Great,
Martha,
thank
has
you.
been amazing having you.
Thank you. I didn't
Yeah.
tell you the story of the ruby slipper.
I love it.
Yeah. See, it's a little pump.
I love
Yeah.
it. Does it have a story?
Yes, it does. There's a piece of advice I would give any young Latina. And I would say it's really important to find your home. Find the people who will be honest with you. Find the people who will tell you like it is and will never judge you and will never hold things against you. I have 3 really close friends, and we really sort of just met each other a couple of years ago. And we're all in the executive VP level of corporations. And one of them called me up one day and said, when something goes wrong, what do you do? Who do you talk to? Who gives you advice? I mean, you're sitting there in the boardroom. Who's telling you what to do and that sort of thing? And I said, well, it's really hard. It really is, because everybody's coming to you for advice. She said, I want to start this little group of people, 4 women, that we meet regularly, and we do this for each other. And I want to pick this woman, I won't tell you the names, but I want to pick this woman because she's really strategic and she knows how to do things in a very strategic way. And I want to pick you because you're very courageous. And you're somebody who can really stand up for yourself and your community. And then I want to pick this other woman. I said, whoa, wait a minute. This sounds like the Wizard of Oz.
Or las hadas madrinas, no?
Yeah, this sounds like the Wizard of Oz. We are the rubies. We are the ruby slippers. Remember, Dorothy clicked the ruby slippers 3 times to get home. So one of the rubies gave each one of us a necklace with a ruby slipper on it. We talk about all things life. We talk about all things career. We talk about all issues. Now, remember, we just met each other a couple of years ago. There is nothing off the table. We are our own boardroom, and we help each other that way. That's the rubies.
I love it. I've talked to my husband a lot about how we all need a board of advisors. And like sometimes it's your partner, but you need a board of advisors that's more in your space. So I know like Claudia put together a little group of Latinas here in New York that I think it's going to become our board of advisors, but everybody needs it. So look for
You've got your own group of
advisors.
rubies, it sounds like.
Well, we're building it, but we need it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I learned so much. This is really my mentorship session in front of everyone.
Communication, storytelling, negotiation, skills that we need to lead
A la Latina. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Also, follow us on social media. And more importantly, if you know a Latina trailblazer who is killing it in corporate America or in any other industry and is opening the door and leaving it open for the next generation, nominate her in our website, alalatina.com.